If there's one thing we can learn from 60s spy movies, other than never to trust a man with a monocle and a cat, it's that supervillains have access to drugs that make lying impossible. But is there any truth to the stories of truth drugs? The story of truth drugs began in the exciting world of obstetrics. At the beginning of the 20th century, doctors were searching for a way to eliminate the pain of childbirth. In 1903, the German doctor Karl Gauss began using a combination of morphine and an ancient drug called scopolamine to induce a semi-conscious state called twilight sleep. In twilight sleep, people feel less pain, and, due to scopolamine's amnesic effects, are left with no memory of the pain that they did feel. Twilight sleep was very widely used as late as the 1970s, resulting in some places in 2 generations of mothers who had absolutely no memory of what childbirth feels like. In 1922, a small-town Texas doctor named Robert House noticed that while in the state of twilight sleep, women tended to be bizarrely truthful. This led him to suspect that scopolamine might somehow block the ability to reason and make lying difficult. To test this, he convinced the local police to let him try it on 2 prisoners about to undergo trial. Before being given the drug, they both claimed to be completely innocent, but while under the effect of scopolamine, they both claimed to be completely innocent, and in fact, their stories didn't change at all. The subsequent trial agreed, and both got off. Dr. House concluded from this that scopolamine made it impossible to lie. Despite the underwhelming nature of this demonstration, the case received an enormous amount of media attention, with scopolamine being hailed as the truth serum. Soon it was being used in other court cases, and generally with the same unimpressive results. By the time Dr. Robert House died in 1930, the story was largely played out. During World War II, a new possible truth serum appeared, a drug called sodium pentothal. Sodium pentothal is an ultra-fast-acting anesthetic and was used on battlefields to sedate severely wounded soldiers. It was reported that soldiers would sometimes blurt out secrets as they lost consciousness, though doctors generally attributed this to the fact that the men had just been blown up and were going into shock. Shortly afterwards, another truth drug was suggested, a related substance called sodium amytal. Various experiments were conducted to test the effectiveness of these substances. For instance, just after the end of World War II, 17 soldiers with charges against them were interviewed while under the influence of sodium amytal. More than half confessed to the crimes that they had been accused of. The results of these tests are open to interpretation, but it was concluded that sodium amytal is the most effective truth drug by far. That people could still easily lie or withhold information while drugged, and that any unusual truthfulness was due to the patients being disorientated and confused by the drugs, rather than a magic inability to lie. As the Cold War began, the world's spy agencies naturally became very interested in this subject. The newly formed CIA set up a top-secret program called Project Artichoke to try to find the perfect truth drug. Drugs tested included LSD, heroin, mescaline, ecstasy, alcohol, and marijuana. New techniques were also tried, such as injecting sleeping drugs into one arm and amphetamines into the other arm at the same time. Narco-hypnosis was invented, where a person would be given truth drugs, then hypnotized to see if that would boost the effect. It didn't. Most of these experiments were performed on unwitting subjects, and at least 2 people are known to have died as a result. A rare first-person account of an interrogation with truth drugs comes from former KGB agent Oleg Gordievsky. At the height of the Cold War, his handlers began to suspect that he might be a double agent for the British. There are several reasons why they may have thought this, a key one being that he was. He was invited for lunch at KGB headquarters, and his drink was spiked with a truth drug. He said it made him feel very excited and full of ideas and like he wanted to talk forever, but he had no trouble keeping his secrets to himself. Shortly afterwards, he defected to the West by hiding in a car boot. Eventually, as their unreliability became more clear, both sides began to lose interest in truth drugs and went back to older means of obtaining secrets. Though whether those methods really yield better information is up for debate. Today, the use of truth drugs hasn't died out entirely. In India, they are commonly used in criminal trials. Evidence obtained under sodium pentothal or sodium amytal has been used in hundreds of cases in the last decade alone. In the USA, there have been multiple claims that truth drugs were used on terror suspects after 9/11. In 2013, a judge ruled that evidence obtained under sodium amytal would be admissible in the upcoming trial of James Egan Holmes, alleged perpetrator of the Aurora Cinema Massacre. And in Russia, defectors have claimed that the government has access to a truly perfect truth drug known only as SP-117. Though, like most claims from Putin's Russia, this should be taken with a pinch of salt, and a truly enormous amount of vodka.